great truth to you, the idea of what it says, what he have God said. This is the questions, because once you're looking at those things, it changes the reality of what God, prescribed concerning the creation. And then that can really mess you up completely. And this is exactly the same thing when it gets to idea of relationships. You see, many of those sitcoms you watch on television, my goodness, people watch, what happened with this guy today? He's hitting on those movies, now he's hitting on sitcoms. Yes, many of those sitcom you watch, they give you the idea of a family where they have the dad, and then they have the children and the mom. Mostly what they show you, they show you that the mom is the most intelligent person in the family, and the kids are so intelligent too, but the father is the dummy. He doesn't know how to use electronics. He doesn't know how to do this and that. Everything is a mockery concerning the dad. But in reality, the Bible teaches that the father is the head of the family, where everybody supposed to follow his instruction, his leadership. But in the TV, in the sitcoms world, they show you the father is the last person that you want to listen to. The kids are making fun of the father, the mom's making fun of the father, and the father accept the reality, he's a dummy. And the father could be a doctor in the sitcom. The father could be a brilliant surgeon. You know what I mean? All these things. But when it comes to lead his family, they portray him as a dummy, as a person who has no clue how to do this. But who do you think behind all these things? Do you think that they happen because of entertainment purposes only? No. They happen because the devil is at work. The devil is using the same trick that he used on the women to seduce this world, into disobeying God's word. Like I said to you, the devil really doesn't care that much whether you love God or you don't love him. As long as he can make you disobey him, like every day or one step at a time, about certain one principle here, one principle over there. When it comes to money, when it comes to relationship, when it comes to work, everything in life, when it comes to morality, as long as the devil can make you disobey that kind of stuff, it's actually fulfill his purpose. He doesn't care. When the devil, now think about this, my friend. I'm not picking on anybody, but it's worth talking about it because it's important for our survival. Like I said, it's not because it's not my business, but if it didn't happen, I wouldn't have any example of showing you what is wrong and what is right. And I think it was wrong. That's why I'm talking about those things, because they're still here as record for us, so that when we look at them, then we avoid them at all costs, because we see what they did to this person over here. See, when the devil caused the principal leader of this land, the president of the United States, to fall into sexual sin, everybody cried, said, "Oh my goodness, man, this is too much." Do you understand? I'm sure the person who actually was succumbed didn't feel, proud of that. You know what I mean? And so think about it. You got so many other leaders in our world, even from the evangelical circle. What I told you. Remember at the beginning of this section right here, I told you that sin is a weapon, in the sense that it's after every one of us. And there's not one of us that can beat on our chest that said we get it yet. We all in the journey, day by day, trying to do the right we can in order to arrive safely. Because I think there's a verse in the Bible, which I don't know the reference, but he said, okay, take heed lest you fall. We're talking about sin, about the situation of this world. Because no matter what you do, especially if you're the eyes of the population, of the public, if you're a leader, I mean, just recently, look at what happened here. I'm not defending anybody. I don't even know the situation, but because it was on TV, I can talk about it. Look at what happened very recently. You know, when you look at this guy, when the pandemic started, he was really in it. He was so much the leader that everybody was looking for, as opposed to others. I'm talking about the ex-governor of the state of New York. And then later, what happened though, he ended up get involved. I'm not sure exactly what happened there, in the situation of a sexual scandal of this and this and that and this and this and this and that. How do you think those happen, my friend? Because the devil takes pleasure in this. He's looking at people in a position where they're in position of influence to make people do things that are right, to lead them in the right direction. If he get this thing fall, then the whole work is also the whole work that we're trying to do crumbles at the same time. So we've seen in the past that evangelical leaders had to come on television to confess of their wrongdoing, in their money or sexual accusation, all these things, because of the fact that if you don't take heed, you're gonna fall. I got to find the reference of this verse to tell you. It's just not in my head right now, because you know how it is when you're talking and then God aligns you with some of those some of those key point of reference, but I cannot remember exactly what reference in the Bible it is, but it's important, that verse, to do that. So we see God, the word of God was questioned by different forms, right there in that conversation the serpent had with the woman. So don't you think that you can fall also? Do you think you're so strong? And we talk about this because I wanted to prove to you that it's not so much of thinking that the woman and Adam, they were so bad. That's why they cause us so much trouble today, and then we eventually gonna die. No, that's not the reason why. If you were in their shoes, you would have been even worse in a way, because who knows how would you have responded to all of these things? You understand? He had to be one of them. So today you've done actually even worse, because now, even though we have the example of what happened in the garden there, we still have people who still ignore, who still ignore God's word, who still ignore what God says, so they can live their own ways and just put away what God says. We have so much to talk about in this. And I even touched a lesson today, because I think God, the Holy Spirit, is working here by doing this. We saw also last time that God's will was rejected, as we talked about it. Here's the verse right here, Genesis chapter 3, verse 6. It says, "And the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and the tree to be desired to make one wise. She took of the fruit thereof, and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat." See, there's no question about it. There's no going back. See, from this verse you can see that Eve gave into the three sources of temptation described in 1 John chapter 2, verse 16, what we talk about here. This is the verse. "For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes and the pride of life, it's not of the Father, but is of the world." 1 John 2:16. You see, lust of the flesh, good for food. That's what the woman said. Lust of the eyes, pleasant to the eyes, because he saw it, attractive, very nice, good looking. Pride of life, to be desired to make one wise. So all these things happen. So we see all these things, and see, here's a very important point I would love to emphasize. God's prescription for mankind was completely rejected. The choice has been made. There's no do-over in perspective of God's plan for his creation, specifically for mankind. This has been the place of no return that God intended to keep men from going in. However, because of the power of his free will, we talked about that, not even God in his sovereignty could not stop him from falling. Okay, not even God in his sovereignty could stop him from falling. God could not do that because of the free will. It's very important, guys, that you get this into your head. Understand that information, because I'm going to pause here to say it, to explain it a little bit. The idea, see, let me give an example of what I'm trying to say here when you talk about the free will of men, all right? There's no law that says, okay, when you wake up in the morning, for a man, you should wear a white shirt on. There's no law that says that. So when we talk about what shirt, what color you wear, unless it's being dictated from your workplace, you know, that you wear this uniform. But if it doesn't, then it's not dictated anywhere. Then you have the free reign to dress however you want, as long as you are decent. Okay? So when that happens, we're not talking about the free will right there. You see what I'm saying? We're not talking about free will, so you can choose wherever you want to wear. No, we're not talking about it. What we're talking about in the most serious way is the fact that God says specifically, do not touch this food. Do not eat it. So in that sense, when there is this imperative, you know what I mean? When this imperative is already given, there's an established law that says very clearly no about certain things. Now your free will come into play. You're going to have to decide whether or not you're going to obey that or whether or not you're going to disobey it. And I think that's what happened here with these two. You know, they disobey because they chose to take part of the fruit in spite of the information and the instruction or the prescription that God gave concerning it. That's what we're talking about here. So this three-letter word, the word sin, S-I-N, is more dangerous, my friend, than a nuclear weapon, considering its effect upon the lives of humanity. If you can understand the magnitude, I hope to God that we never experience that in this world or anywhere. The reason I'm saying it, because we talked about it, not in this program, of course, obviously, but you talk about it at home, you've seen it on TV. We know that the United States of America have, you know, a lot of nuclear, you know, weapon, and Russia, you know, China, France and Canada, Mexico, Afghanistan, so many other countries in the world, they have their arsenal, you know, with that type of you know, deadly weapons. The reason I'm saying this is because I hope to God that we will never have to experience, you know, the effect of those weapons in our lifetime. But if that were to be the case, what you may see as a result of those weapons being deployed is nothing compared. Do you understand? It's nothing compared to how dangerous sin is. Because what happened, though, there might be a possibility, even if those weapons being deployed, that you be safe. But sin, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether there's no place you can hide for sin not to get a hold of you. There's no place in the world that can protect you from sin, from the effect of sin. Sin is a problem. It's actually going to take you out of this world. There's not a medication that you can take right now to prevent sin from taking you. No. So sin is very dangerous and deadly. The only thing is, it's the same thing like if people has a situation, we are managing it. We are managing it in the fact that, you know, we know eventually it's going to kill us, but we don't want it to kill us too soon. So we're managing it. We talk about this more later on. Sin is still dangerous today, the same as it was in the garden from the beginning. Maybe our parents did not understand, or maybe they did not know how dangerous sin was then. They could have prevented it, because if they have known the effect of that, how dangerous it was going to be for all of us, the rest of the world, even to our generation today, they would have done something to prevent it. I don't think they were that really bad. Maybe in their own disposition, they didn't think about it that way. They didn't see the effect, how far down the road it would be. They probably thought he would affect them only, and that's it. So they would bear that problem in themselves, and then he died with them, and that's it. But God already had something in mind, which they probably will regret it, that they have been the ones, who have caused this world this problem. I think one day when we meet those two, they probably give us, a clear picture of how they felt we got in sin. Because if they have known, that's my version, my kind of like, the way I perceive that. I'm not sure if it's true, but I think if they have known the magnitude, dangerous this thing was at the beginning, they probably would have, not thinking about themselves, but they would have just said, oh, listen, I'm thinking about my great son to the 21st century, who will be sitting here behind, this camera to talk to the world, explaining what happened in the garden that they did. I would have prevented it. They would have made the extra effort to stay away from that. But unfortunately, there's no way we can prove it today. But sin was dangerous in the garden, even then, as it is today. Sin was not made as clothes to dress with. God didn't put sin in the garden, like I said, as a way for us, like I have my outfit on, so I can put it on me whenever I want. That was not the purpose. We're going to talk about a little bit of this. Or sin was not to enjoy at our own leisure, like we see it happening every day. People have low regard, of sin. They know exactly what sin is all about. There's not a person in this world who does not know what sin is all about. Everybody in some way has this, understanding of sin. They know. They probably don't know the verse that says, okay, the wages of sin is death. But they know exactly the effect of sin. They live it every day. They cursed about it, because of what they're going through. They know that. A woman who actually bears a child all the way to delivery, understand the effect of sin. A man who has to get up early in the morning, and goes home really late, sometimes barely feed himself properly, and take care of himself rested. They understand the effect of sin. So they may not know the verse, but they know exactly what sin is all about based on their experiences. So we know exactly. So now here's the thing I want to share with you to understand. Sin was given as a test in the garden for training exercise of our free will to recognize it. I am giving you, truth with, I would say, with thickness right here. Because what I'm saying to you, think about this, right? Because he explains the reason why God put it in there. Because there's no need for God himself to have around a tree that can bring problem to this world. Do you understand what I'm saying? God doesn't need that. But the problem is, how would we know today the idea of what free will of mankind was from the beginning if there wasn't anything to test that? How would man go about exercising the free will that God gave him if there was not a tree in the garden, if there was not specifically the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, or if you will, sin that God placed there in the garden to test that. So obviously, he was given as a test in the garden for training purpose, exercise of our free will to recognize it. The same way, like for instance, right now, I have money in my pocket. May not have a lot of money, but I have at least $20 in my pocket. I can easily go to the local convenience store out there and then buy one of those whiskey. I can very easily do that. I can buy 6-pack of beer of different, brand, local or international, whatever. I can buy, a big size of vodka if I want. Right? I'm telling you, my friend, I can easily do that. There's no way, nothing can stop it. God is not going to say, hey, please, don't go in that. God's not going to say that. God's not going to stop it. Just like he was in the garden watching the serpent and seducing the woman concerning the fruit of that tree in the midst of the garden. God is watching me at the same moment. If I decide to go to that convenience store to buy a 6-pack of beer, buy a pack of cigarette, to buy all these things that I know are sinful. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I can exercise my free will to do that. And that's exactly what happened in the garden. There was not any 6-pack of beer in the garden. God didn't talk about that. Why? Because in that time, God did not use 6-pack. Because in the garden, the 6-pack of beer that we're talking about was represented in the knowledge of good and evil. That fruit in there, that tree in there, it was represented in there. That's what they did. That's what they disobeyed. They disobeyed the idea of what God says right there in the garden. They disobey the idea of their sin in the garden, not to go near it, not to get involved in it. Do you follow what I'm saying? Also, I can easily go, like I said, if you travel, on the interstates, you will see different billboards out there advertising places where people can have what you call gentlemen clubs. My friend, you're saying, well, why are we stuck in those, examples? They are the ones that are destroying this world very easily. It takes time for somebody to go, to go out there and use a gun and shoot somebody. It doesn't happen, I would say, just like that. You don't make that decision out of impulses. You don't do that. It happens, that for sure. Nobody ever decide that I'm going to go and kill somebody just like that. Do you follow what I'm saying? But what I'm saying to you here is the fact that because of your free will, you decide, okay, these are really a good place to go. I'm a gentleman, I'm an adult, I can make that kind of decision very easily. See, you go places, it says, guilty pleasures. You see them all over the place in the street. Everywhere you turn, every corner, there's prostitution going on. I'm not talking about the streetwalkers. I'm talking about the establishment there. Those who actually have the place where you pay money to go in so you can have your pleasure you're looking for. Who made that decision for you? You exercise your free will to do that. And exactly that's what I'm talking about. These things were represented there in the garden, in that tree that was in the midst of the garden, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. In that moment, because we were living in the 21st century, we didn't have that available yet. But it was represented there in that tree. And so when the women and the men exercised their free will, when God used that example there for them, To decide, okay, I am not going to do that. I'm going to listen to what God says. They did not do it. They chose option number 2, which was they follow with their own conviction by taking part of the forbidden tree. And so when you go out there, like I said, just like I can easily do it right now, I can actually get up right now and go next door out there, not too far from where I am, and buy a 6-pack of beer of any kind. I can easily do that. That's the same thing that they did in the garden, because this 6-pack was not available at the moment, but was represented in the garden. That's what they did. They disobeyed God. So don't tell me that you're living in a time that He would not be possible for you to make that decision. Yes, it was. In the garden, like I said, He was given the tree of the knowledge of good and of evil was given for training exercise of these two that were there, to a free will to recognize it. So now they know. We also know what that entails because of what they did. But now my question for you, my friend, why do we keep doing that? Why do we keep exercising our free will in doing the wrong that we are told not to do? We got to be mindful of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil that's right there in the midst of our lives every time. It's right here in our home. It's right here in our workplace. It's wherever we go. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil is right there. Whatever we do that's contrary to what God says as law, as precepts, as a command in the Bible, we are doing exactly what they did when they were in the garden. So we got to exercise our free will for once in our life to make the right choice, to make not only ourselves proud of the choice that we make, but we can also make God proud of the choice that you make concerning what He says. See, that's what the problem is, and that's what sin is all about. Because sometimes we're not aware of what God says. We think that we are allowed to, in a sense, to imagine things and make it happen. This world is not your world, my friend. You have been placed in here for a specific reason, for a specific duration of time. You're not here by accident, and you are not here by coincidence. So you got to be careful. Don't start imagining things and then to try to make it reality, not only for you and for others. No. You see, think about this. For those of you who have been in the army, soldiers, you received that kind of training. What I'm talking about, those also police academy, they have this kind of training where they there's exercises where you do, where you go to different rooms, and in those rooms they have pictures of good guys and bad guys. And then those exercises, as you're going around with your weapons, you kind of you need to specifically identify the bad guys among the good guys, because you don't want to shoot the good guys. You know what I'm saying? Because that's what I do. I mean, a lot of people, they start this training, and then what happened though, they fail in between, because sometimes the similarity between the good guys and the bad guys, they're so close, and in a distance of, because of when the adrenaline is pumping, you really make a decision in a split second, and sometimes you make the wrong choice. So the soldiers had to go through this kind of training. Those who are in the institution, police or the law enforcement, that kind of stuff, they have gone through those training in order to make decisions in a split second, so that they can prevent further damages or difficulties for others around in this life. It is that way. The soldier, they have to learn how to distinguish the bad guys from the good guy, from the good ones. So it is for us still to identify it wherever it may be found among our pews. When you go to school, for those of you, or when you had the opportunity to go to school, most of you, you never thought that everybody, you may assume that, because we can, deal with the assumption that everybody who was sitting there, they were good. Well, just as it's okay for you to assume that everybody was sitting around was, good, was bad. You can assume both possibilities. But you have, in front of you, targets of way to exercise your free will every single day. So how would you know which one is right, which one is wrong, or which one is good or evil? That we have to come down again to the same, instruction that I've provided before. You have to be in the Word. Because wherever you go, my friend, you're going to have an opportunity to exercise your free will. To do that. So it's important. When God told the man to stay away from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, it was not an invitation given to him to discover what the tree was all about. Let me say that again. When God gave the instruction, or the prescription, if you will, to the man in the garden, it was not an invitation to discover, what the tree was all about. It was simply, listen to this, my friend, a warning to make the man aware of the danger that could potentially ruin his life. The woman that God gave him, and later in the lives of the entire world. Can you imagine that? Like I just said, if they were aware of the damage, how far down the road the disobedience would have, reached, if they had that slightly idea in their head, they probably would have done differently. I truly believe that. I thought, when I started studying this, that they may have thought that it only going to affect them for now. Because the reason being, when the verse says, okay, in the day that it is, what's the word again? I don't want to use my own word. When it says, in the day, where's the verse right here? Sorry about that, folks. It says, for in the day that thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die. You see, they were talking directly to them. The Bible, God didn't say, okay, the entire world will be dead. No, He didn't say that. At that time, God did not give that prescription concerning the rest of the world. Matter of fact, it was only 2 of them. So the Bible was specifically focusing in these 2 right there in the garden. So that's the reason why I think in their mind they must have thought that it's only going to really affect us. So we're going to accept the responsibility of our wrongdoings because we have nobody else involved, because there were nobody around them. But little that they knew, God had other things in mind, that, with them, it wasn't only for the purpose of being in the garden only. God had purpose